So we just learned something together. You can drag and drop the little icons in Zoom and put them back on your dashboard, even though they reorganize where the buttons are. So like I was saying, I am not a digital native. It is not my day-to-day role to work in technology, but I do work with technology every day. So that was very frustrating. But you, my friend, work in technology all day, every day. So even you didn't know that you could drag and drop the icon.
Zoom is not known as the best user experience. They have very tiny print text under the More button. Drag the pin removed from toolbar. I never noticed that until now.
Well, they just moved all the icons and I was annoyed. I'm like, this is not helpful. I wish they would just let me drag and drop the icons I want. I attempted it and boom, there it was.
Yeah, I'm still dragging stuff right now.
So let's talk about more impactful things in the tech world today. And I'm very grateful you took some time and are going to lend a little bit of insight and expertise to a conversation I've been having in a lot of rooms lately, which is about AI, how it's impacting workflow, how it's impacting the work we all do, not just to help us do it better, but in some cases allows us to do things we otherwise couldn't do. Because of that, there's intersections that are impacted. Marketing and advertising is greatly impacted. Your website, right? You were just talking, and I would love for you to expand a little bit about what the website intent and purpose is today. And that always changes. And I think business owners and especially entrepreneurs and solopreneurs may miss this nuance of what a website is. It's not just to say you exist, right? The company exists, because that's easy to put up. Let's talk a little bit about the purpose.
Yeah, so we actually have a product at Mozilla called Solo. It's a website builder for service providers. So it is for the small business segment. And so as part of that, we get like a really good view into what they want out of their website. And also just sort of being a browser company, we're very close to like, what is the future of the internet going to look like? And I would say 2 years ago, the normal flow was something like, I have some side hustle I've either just thought about or I have something I'm doing and marketing through WhatsApp or Facebook community or Instagram or whatnot. And I want to legitimize it and I want to grow my business. So I go and set up a website and I set up that website. And then the first thing, and we'd see this through support emails and whatnot. The first thing would be, hey, I'm not getting any traffic from Google, right? And then we would suggest like, well, go do this and create content and link to it. And some of them started getting some traffic. It's been great. Now, if you look at the data, like just over the last 6 months, click-throughs from Google search results is definitely down. Like every publisher that I'm aware of, every top tier publisher, if you just kind of look at global rankings, it's down. People are consuming content through AI chat. And it's corroborated because if you look at Google search results now, they've, I think, more than doubled the ad load. So you're seeing 5 or 6 ads per search engine result page, they call them SERPs, versus what used to be 2 or 3 ads. And, as a sidebar, there's always been kind of this industry, which is like, if Google needs to manage earnings, they just adjust the number of ads they show per page. The fact that they've increased it is a good signal that they're just not getting as many clicks as they probably previously had. The challenge therein then becomes, if you're a small business and you set up your website and you need to grow and you're not getting that traffic, what do you do? And that's kind of a whole different track. Like how do you sort of figure out the growth? But then the follow-up emails for the solo product in support, specifically people asking like, I just received this note. Is this a real person? And that's the type of reply that I had not ever seen before in my sort of 20 plus year career in tech, but now happening on a weekly basis, which is just wild. And I think what's happened is AI has made content creation so cheap that the role of the website in some ways has shifted from primarily being about growth and then to being like sort of legitimizing my presence in business to now it being flipped. It's sort of what I like to call a trust artifact. I'm a real person. I'm a real business. You can come to this website. It's actually me. I'm not just a spam bot profile on LinkedIn, of which, they almost encourage it. I'm not just a made up page on Instagram or Threads or whatever it might be, right? So people see like, oh, this is a real business. This is a real person I'm talking to. I want to engage. And I think we're finally in a phase where people are really desiring authenticity again, where we went through maybe a 6-month or 12-month window where it was, let's flood the top of the funnel on social and post 7 times a day. And let's flood our blog and let's flood our newsletter. And we can do all that because we have OpenClaw and we have all this AI automation. And now people are like, wait, maybe we should pull that back and just post once in a while when you actually have authentic thoughts again.
It's interesting because I'm at a moment in time in my career that I'm doing this. This is a public forum for me where most of 99% of my career and my professional life is in private rooms with private conversation. And I was really pushed by clients and colleagues and friends to say, you really need to take that private conversation and put it out into the ether because it's needed now more than ever because everybody else is putting things out that is AI generated, Lisa, but you actually have the experience and knowledge from, 30 plus years of doing all of this that take that private conversation and start to share it publicly. So I think that you're right. At one point, quite some time ago, 15 years ago, I published a magazine. And then, of course, print went by the wayside. Nobody wanted print anymore. And all of a sudden, print is back. And it's back in very intentional ways with very specific market agendas. So I think it's been fine-tuned and it's being used more intentionally, which has greater impact, right, than just putting things out in print just because you can. So I think everything has a pendulum swing and eventually, it finds its center and it finds its value. And people who are intentional about marketing and advertising and trying to build an audience, I believe that all of it is useful, but it has to be intentional. And it can't just be, as you said, generating endless amounts of content and, throwing it out in the ether so that you hope some of it lands in the place you want it to.
An interesting area where we've seen this play out firsthand is actually AI voice calling. One of the things we saw maybe 12 months ago was a lot of interest from small business to set up an AI phone receptionist. So, imagine you're at the restaurant and can't pick up the call.
Yeah.
It hits an AI. Imagine you're Joe the plumber and you can't pick up the call. It hits the AI. And it's been amazing seeing how that arc basically flipped like within like 12 months, where if you talk to Joe the plumber now, a restaurant is still depending on size, but if you talk to Joe the plumber, at least now, their response is much more like, hey, I'm a 2-3 person business. Like, people want to talk to a human. I'm worried it's actually not reflecting my brand or it doesn't feel authentic, right? And so it's interesting how fast that sort of experiment landed. And I think there's going to be other results like this. Right now, I like to say we're still in sort of the tail of a period where people are building a lot of things with AI. There's an abundance of software, but we are also seeing very quickly there's not an abundance of things that people want to pay for. And so a lot of these folks are building, and it is the greatest form of entertainment, and I get that. But it's going to slow down. It doesn't mean AI overall consumption isn't going to go up, for sure.
Right.
But not everyone's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to spend every night and weekend burning oil, burning tokens, literally, to build X and build Y and build Z. And I'm not going to buy good alternatives to Salesforce and Zoom and Slack, right? So you are seeing a little bit of that pullback, a little bit more intentionality, and a little bit more judgment in where it's best applied and where it's best used. But I think this is good. This is like the tech adopter curve, and you're learning when to apply technology, when it's helpful and whatnot. And small businesses are doing the same thing.
Sure. You just mentioned something that's really important, and your thoughts on this, particularly because of what you do and where you work and what you know that the rest of the marketplace doesn't. What people are paying for to build things out, completely understood that there'll be a learning curve and there'll be a marketplace for that, and people will become more intentional about how they use those tools. But what about information? What about the access of information? You talked about Google search being down and what Google's doing to try to compensate for that. What about your average person who's just looking for information? For 20 years, we've all gotten on the internet and kind of like done our own research, and it's given us great access to information for all communities and all people, regardless of socioeconomic status. And right, you can go into a library and for free access the internet on someone else's computer. You don't even need a device. How is AI and the paid access to information changing the access for all of us? What's that going to look like?
One of the unfortunate outcomes of AI, and it's something that we actually think a lot about at Mozilla, and it's the role of the open web and the open internet. So you could think of Web 1.0, we're all figuring it out. This is like 2000 era, late 90s. People are publishing things, blinking text and multicolored.
Okay, so you're a dinosaur like me. I was around then. I remember.
Yeah. But Web 2 was a real unlock. let's call it 2008 to 2012 sort of era, where we effectively introduced JSON and APIs and ways for websites to share data and communicate with each other. And in that period, for those that were around that time, practically every web application opened up interfaces and opened up their data.
Yep.
And people were building all kinds of things. Companies like Zynga were created on the backs of Facebook data. Companies like Instagram in a similar fashion. Many companies emerged based on LinkedIn data and so forth. It was a very open sort of internet. It was the opposite of what was previously called in Web 1.0 era, like the AOL walled garden, which is often the example that's cited. Unfortunately, today, there's multiple things going on with basically majority of the business model of the internet being built on ads. How do you make money if the consumption of that content isn't through your website, but rather through agents that are crawling that data or through LLMs that are crawling that data and then surfacing it through AI chat? Advertising, we like to say, is the most democratic form of monetization because it effectively, or equitable form of monetization, because it effectively enables content to be available to all these emerging markets where they can't afford to pay for content paywall.
Right. Yeah.
The second issue, which people don't talk about as much, is these LLMs that are crawling all of these websites, they generate real load on these websites. And that load is not insignificant. Cloudflare came out and said that total bandwidth or traffic being consumed now is greater by bots than humans. That traffic can be upwards of 70% of all your website traffic. So if you have a monthly host bandwidth bill, that's, let's call it 10 grand a month. Now you're 7 grand out of that 10 grand a month is bots. And that really affects your bottom line. So not only you're getting hit on real human traffic, which is impacting your ad monetization, your costs have also gone up because all of these bots are crawling you constantly. And so you're like, okay, what do I allow? What do I not allow? And so,
And it doesn't affect your ROI. At the end of the day, those bots do nothing to move your business forward. There's no part of that converts.
There's been mixed opinions on this, and I would say it depends. And what I mean by that is there's kind of two levels of bots. There's bots from, let's call them legitimate LLM crawlers. Let's call it your ChatGPT, your Gemini, your Bing bot, whatever, right? Your Brave search bot, etc. And then there's bots that are coming, they're basically unattributed. They're open source LLMs just crawling for information. They're search API providers. Who knows? And there's kind of a gray area, like where do you set the line? What do you allow? What do you don't allow? And then, of course, there's a decision behind that. Do you even care to be surfaced in AI chat or not? Now, people call that AEO, answer engine optimization. SEO is, for all intents and purposes, dying. And you're seeing this across the board with web publishers. And so people are really sensitive about AEO. And one of the things that's interesting about AEO is it's much harder if you're a long tail website to be surfaced in an AEO result. But if you're successful for whatever reason and you are mentioned, it can drive enormous amounts of traffic. And I would argue that many of the most successful developer tools that have just grown astronomically over the last year or two has not been because of SEO. It's been because a user went to ChatGPT and said, hey, I want to build this web application. And it goes, oh, to build that, go install a Replit account, and then go add Supabase, and then go add, some clerk for your auth provider and whatnot, right? And so if you go and look at these developer tools, their registrations have skyrocketed over the last year or two because of all the people trying to unlock their creative energy through building through these AI chat experiences. And so, obviously it's slowing down now because it was kind of like a massive surge of let's go try this out. It's like, oh, this is not for me. But it's been interesting to watch. But the TLDR on all of this is we are entering what I would describe more as a closed internet. And we don't really know what the ramifications of that are.
They're concerning. I mean, it's very concerning. I've been in community development, community building, community for my entire career in one way or another. And it is very concerning to me. Who's going to get shut out, right? Who's not going to get pulled along? Who's not going to have access? I'm concerned about the divide it's going to create. And again, it's probably not going to happen, in short term, but long term access and the long term of this is concerning. Just on a side note, I was one of those people, Replit, my God, when I found it, couldn't stop me. Every idea, every thought that I ever had about anything.
Still building with it?
So it is costly to build in the detail that I envision. So what it's allowed me to do is kind of build on surface concepts, kind of see if I really built what I thought I wanted. And what I'm in the middle of doing is kind of filtering all of that to decide which one project I'm going to build in great detail and I'll pay to and invest in in
Yeah.
building that. But just on the surface, as a free app, to build a concept out, right? What's it look like? What can it do? What am I missing? What parts and pieces? It's fascinating. Being in development, I think I was in the mid 90s when I built my first internet company. And it was at a moment in time where you really wrapped your head around a handful of softwares and building tools that allowed everybody to build. And then it was like, okay, well, how do you use this tool differently than your competitor? Building market share was very different. The whole, progression of where we were to where we are, very different. But the things that took me teams of designers and programmers to accomplish in a year, I do in 20 minutes. Kind of blows my mind a little bit. So I am a mindful, intentional person. I do a lot of research before I move something forward, and it has just been a lot of fun, right?
I think that is sort of the trend we've been seeing. People are becoming a little bit more intentional about what they want to build, and this is totally normal. You go through a lot of experimentation, and
Sure.
your judgment sort of improves over time. I do agree that every tech innovation has expanded the TAM of people who can build. And we're at a point now where everybody can build. And I like to describe that as unleashing all the creative energy of billions of people. And we're seeing that. We're seeing billions of things being created. With that, obviously, comes increased competition. But in the end, I still think these businesses that are succeeding have created authentic relationships with their customers.
Sure.
It's not just been AI execution across the board, and they genuinely understand the problem and they have a real passion for the problem. I've seen a lot of stuff being constructed in this AI era where people are putting stuff out there, but are they really spending time to really understand the problem, and do they really care about the problem, or they just want to like publish something, right? It's almost become a vanity metric. So I think this is all normal and healthy. Of course, I'm still concerned about, what the future of the web looks like. The ad monetization business model is so important.
Raj, I'm gonna stop us here because I want a 2.0 with you. And I have no doubt this conversation has endless directions to go in. And I'm so grateful for some of your time to share thoughts and ideas about where we are currently, where we're headed. We'll give it a few months and then we'll circle back and we'll do a 2.0.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you so much again for your insights, your time, and your willingness to come and chat.
For sure. No, thanks. Thanks for making time.